Well, hi everyone. Thank you for taking the time to watch our SILC workshop, Social Change Strategies for Student Organizations. My name is Alyssa Francis. I use the pronoun she, her, hers, and I am a graduate assistant for the Student Involvement and Leadership Center.
And hi everybody, my name is Kemper. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I'm the Assistant Director for Student Engagement in the Center for Service Learning.
We wanted to start by welcoming you as we've introduced ourselves, and today we're going to go over the Strategic Action Framework for Community Engagement, as well as the Community Engagement Framework, and then some resources and strategies for what's next.
Awesome. So the Strategic Action Framework for Community Engagement is something that our office put together in partnership with the Center for Community Health and Development over the last maybe 18 months or so. And the purpose of it is really to be a guide for engaging in work in partnership with community organizations, faculty, staff, community partners, really being involved in community engaged work in a meaningful and effective way. So there are really 6 phases that we're going to break down, the majority of them in this video today. Assess, plan, act, evaluate. Those are the ones we're going to talk about today. And then sustaining, communicating, and celebrating will be a different conversation for a different time. And then kind of overarching themes with those 4 to 6 phases are engaging and reflecting. So those are kind of the things that we're going to be talking about as we move through this presentation. And hopefully the framework itself is helpful for you as you're thinking about how you as an organization can engage in this work and engage in a maybe deeper way than you have been before. So the first piece that we want to talk about is engage. Like I mentioned, this is one of those sort of overarching themes that regardless of which phase of the framework you're in, we want you to be engaging and being intentional about how you're engaging. So there are 3 pieces to this: the social change wheel, pathways to service, and levels to participation. So we'll go over each one really quickly. So the first one is the social change wheel. So this is just a visual representation of the variety of ways that people can get engaged in social change based on the interests that they have and the passions that they have and the skills that they have. So you can see some things that might be familiar, like volunteering in direct service, voting, informal political activities, and advocacy, but there are also things like deliberative and reflective dialogue, protests and demonstrations, social innovation. So this is really getting at this broad scope of how you as an individual and you as an organization can work to create social change based on the strategies that work best for you and your interests. The next one is the pathways to service. So this is kind of a less broad interpretation of the ways that you can engage as an individual or as an organization. And these really focus on the smaller scale service versus the big picture social change. So that's kind of the differentiation between the two. And for both the social change wheel and the pathways to service, we do have more information about that on our website under the For Students tab. So there are web pages that have more information about organizations and programs and resources based on the pathways to service and the social change wheel. And the last piece here is the community engagement continuum. So what this is really helping us think about is the social change wheel and the pathways to service. Think about the ways that you can get engaged. This is kind of the depth of which you are engaged in community work. So the most basic is outreach, having some level of involvement, coexisting, and having communication channels across partners. And the deepest is shared leadership. We're having this really mutually beneficial bi-directional relationship that has broader outcomes for the community, and a lot of trust has been built. So whether you're at outreach, consulting, involving, there's a way to move deeper into that continuum. And so that's what this is really representing.
So one of the next parts that we'll talk about is reflect, which is allowing the continuous learning to occur in a way that informs the future action. So in the lens of your student organizations, we've come up with some ways for intentionality to count, as well as questions to ask yourselves as you're reflecting within your organizations. And so we recommend making space for reflection, whether it be in an exec team meeting or in a general body assembly, just so that way there is that space for students to share how they feel and reflect on what they're experiencing in hopes of using that with the future action that we're going after. Encourage journal writing before, during, and after experiences related to service. So that way students are able to remember what they were feeling in the moment and use that later to, again, form discussion and opportunities after that, as well as review meeting notes outside of org meetings. So that way we can increase the meaning making opportunities of the work that we're doing in our organizations, and reminding ourselves of the connections to our mission and values. And if there's a disconnect, offering a time for us to identify that. And then also creating agendas and asking important questions within them. Allowing a little bit of structure to those reflections can be really helpful, especially if this is a new activity for students or your organization. And some questions that you can ask yourself could be, what was supposed to happen? What actually happened? Were there differences between the two? And why do we think that that happened? We can also ask what worked and why it didn't, and if we had the opportunity to do it over, or if this is an annual event that we do every year, what can we do differently next time? And then we can also ask ourselves, who was involved? How were they involved? Who was impacted and how? We could also ask who wasn't involved and what impact that could have on what we're planning as well. So the next part is assess. And so that would be considering the issues you and those in your community care about. And so you'll be sure to include community members in identifying what matters to them. And so this is one place where Rock Chalk Central can really come to the advantage of your organization. And that allows automated event feedback to all event attendees. So if you're planning an event, you can send an email to them an hour after it's over, immediately asking for their feedback. You can also send out forms and surveys to your organization members regarding your organization. Did you have a good experience? What would you like us to do differently? Again, applying some of those reflection questions we just went over. It also offers structured time to receive suggestions and feedback and to be able to track that. So maybe last semester we participated in this assessment and we were told X, Y, and Z. And this semester we really want to act on that and make sure that we don't receive it again. Or if we do receive the same feedback, we can identify a pattern and go about some ways to hopefully set some new processes for our organization. Also, dedicating meetings to just thinking about your organization and not planning for the next big event. Taking some time to reflect and assess within a meeting can be really helpful in assisting all of the other really awesome things that you're doing within your organization. And then as well as offering opportunities to discuss the organization in various settings. So that could be, again, those board meeting discussions, whole organizations. If you have a one-on-one structure set up with your organization members, that could be a really good time as well. And this just allows for more opportunities for students to share how they feel, what their experiences are, and give them lots of comfortable environments to be able to share those feelings.
Awesome. And assessing is really important as you go into the planning stage, because you have to have an idea of what is going on and what's working well and what isn't before you can really make a plan for how to move forward and whatever initiatives you would like to see happen. So in the planning stage, we're really coming to a conclusion about where we want to go from here. What are our next steps in creating an opportunity or creating a space that is improved based on the assessment that we have done. So a really valuable piece of this is determining a shared vision and mission for your organization. If you have one already, doing some assessment on that and thinking about, is this still relevant, or are there changes we want to make to our shared vision and mission to better reflect the direction that we're working to go in. So on the community toolbox, which is linked from the community engagement toolkit page that we will share, there's a lot of really helpful information about vision and missions and creating outcomes, to be able to kind of put that together as an executive team or within different committees within the organization, so that a lot of people at different levels have some sort of ownership over the process, and thinking about how does that vision and mission really translate to action steps that you're going to be taking to move forward. So thinking about who are the key stakeholders that need to be involved in developing this plan. And this includes maybe folks outside of the organization that are impacted by whatever problems or issues that you've noticed throughout your assessment. So community partners, nonprofit professionals, faculty, staff, if they're involved, thinking about how those folks really play in as stakeholders in your plan. And then making sure that the goals that you set based on, your action plan are really SMART goals, right? Specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. We want to make sure that the things that we're doing, we can actually accomplish them in the time frame that we're wanting to. And also being able to, I think is important, go back to this plan and reassess as you're going forward of, okay, how are we doing on this? Are we making progress in the ways that we want to, or do we need to do some reflection and reassess where we are and how we want to move forward? So there's a lot of moving pieces to planning, but it is a really valuable step in getting everybody in your organization together and understanding the common path forward, which I think is really valuable in working to create social change within your organization and within the community.
And then the next one is ACT. We'll consider actions based on your assessment and plan, and then you'll carry them out within your organizations. So in this, you will advocate on behalf of your personal and organizational beliefs and values. Through the other aspects of this process, you're just going to do what you've set out to go do. And so one of the things that you can do as a part of your ACT is just notify us of what you are doing. And so we offer the opportunity to speak with members of both the SILC and CSL teams to discuss what actions you're taking and how we can help your organization stay accountable to the changes that you wish to make. You can email us, or there's a request a meeting form for the CSL office to meet with them. There are opportunities to share published updates on Rock Track Central to your organization members. You can talk with your advisor or coordinating academic or student affairs department and share what you're doing with them so they can help your efforts and stretch your work even further. Most importantly with the ACT is just building capacity and enhancing the competencies of those doing this work, because the more often you engage in it, the better the capacity, the more experience, and the greater results that you're hopefully able to see based off the skills that you're accumulating over time by the continued persistence of this effort. And then the last bit is evaluate. And so you'll monitor and track the progress, success, maybe the challenges, to help inform improvements and next steps. So how would you evaluate? One way you could participate in this is by determining a process for tracking and monitoring activities related to your plan and actions, and set up a timeline for synthesizing that data. SILC highly recommends the use of a Microsoft Teams page to keep the info in one spot. Not only are you able to host your meetings, but you're able to include all of your members with your KU email access to have access to it. It makes it really easy for transitions as well, especially if you're wanting to pass on this information year after year. Creating a timeline of how and when you wish to receive information. So maybe you want info by the end of the month or by the end of an officer's term. That's when we're going to do our big evaluation. We also suggest delegating, so just remembering who's responsible for these processes. Do they currently have the capacity? Who's well suited to help at this time? And so taking into consideration those questions can make sure the members that you've assigned this work to are in the best place possible at the time of doing work to help your organization and those you're hoping to serve succeed. And then lastly, building off the efforts in your assess and plan parts, prepare to know what you want to do with the information. So are you collecting information just for your internal usage? Are you hoping to build it into a report to refer on to the university, or maybe the national organization for your local chapter here at KU? And just understanding why you're collecting this, what you're hoping to do with that information can really help or create your thorough and most useful evaluation style for your organization. So one of the ways that we would love to assist you in what you're doing is, again, scheduling an individual consultation, like I just mentioned, with SILC or CSL. And so you can email SILC, and we would be happy to try and schedule a meeting with you that way. And the CSL does have a request a meeting form that they ask for your conversation or presentation that will be linked to this particular PowerPoint that we'll share with you and include listed on our website with the recording. There's also a link to join the CSL's Community Service Advocates group if you're interested in participating in that. We also recommend bookmarking SILC Civic Engagement for Student Organizations page on our new SILC website that is up and available for you all. And it also connects over to CSL's new website. So that way, if you're hopping between pages or wanting to read up on something and then wanting to dive even deeper, CSL's website is available right there as another resource for you all. CSL also has their principles of ethical service listed, and highly recommend that for students who are interested in not only employing their student organization's ideas and beliefs into their service, but what it looks like to do that ethically. And then last but not least, Kate has mentioned throughout this presentation, the CSL Community Engagement Toolbox that's available on their website. It has lots of wonderful resources, and if you look through it and you have any questions, requesting a conversation could be a great way to learn a little bit more, or a presentation, so that way Kate or another member of the CSL team is able to cater their resources specifically to what your organization is doing right now in hopes of having the greatest impact. I have the information listed here for both the Center for Service Learning, where they're currently located, and how you can contact and follow the work that they're doing as an office, as well as the location, contact information, and current programs and opportunities available through SILC. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this recording from our office today, and we look forward to hearing from you about your social change strategies you're employing within your student organizations.